Does Australia have a crisis in the rental market, and is there truly a million vacant homes across Australia? Let's find out. In recent weeks, there have been an abundance of articles floating around the media discussing the rental crisis across Australia. Photos showing long lines of people have adorned the cover of these articles. So is this the case? Does Australia have a shortage of rental properties? Or is there more to the story? In this episode, we try to explain the million vacant properties Australia has and hypothesize where the hidden vacancies could be and how they might be the solution to the current market turmoil. To understand the rental market, we need to understand the housing market. The housing market can be broken down into many different segments, but the key parts of the market are the owner-occupiers, renters, and second homeowners. While this is not the only segments of the market, they make up the vast majority. Let's consider some of the information that we can derive from the 2021 census. During this time frame, there was 9.8 million households in Australia where the household tenure was known, of which 67% were homeowners, 31% were renters, and 2.1% were of other tenure. So we have 9.8 million households. This is important because when we look at the next figure, which is the total dwellings in Australia, there is almost 10.8 million dwellings. So what we have is a million dwellings that are unaccounted for in the census because they are vacant during census night. Australia over the past decade has seen new construction rapidly take off. Since June of 2016, Australia's total housing stock has increased from 9.8 to 10.8 million in 2022. Over the space of 6 years, Australia has built more than a million dwellings. Most of this new construction has been in the form of high-density living. In comparison to freestanding houses, high-density living offers a more affordable solution to Australia's already costly housing. Once the numbers have been analysed, it appears that there is a million property disparity between households and total dwelling stock. So why do we have this disparity? Well, there are 5 key reasons that will be discussed in this video to help us explain this disparity. Number 1, vacant units in new developments that haven't been sold yet. Number 2, second homes including short-term holiday rentals. Number 3, homes awaiting to be demolished. Number 4, those away from their property either overseas or domestically. Number 5, properties that are vacant due to ownership changes. The headline figure of a million new dwellings is only half the equation. When considering if this is enough supply, it's important to also consider both the population growth and household size. In June of 2016, Australia's population was just north of 24 million, and by June of 2022, the population was just shy of 26 million. So roughly 2 million increase in Australia's population during this time frame. According to the 2021 census, the average household is 2.5 people, which means on average Australia has built over the last 6 years enough houses for 2.5 million people. In theory, there is enough supply of housing for the population growth that has occurred. Whilst it appears Australia has built enough homes on the surface level, the longer term projections demonstrate this issue more. In 1999, Australia's population was expected to grow by 24% from the 1996 census number of around 18,300,000 to around 22,700,000. Therefore, Australia's population has outgrown these estimates by around 3.3 million people. Australia was expected to have between 9.4 and 10 million households by the year 2021. The figure in fact was 9.8 million. Australia has managed the extra 3.3 million people by having a household size more than the projections. The 1999 projection was that the average household size would be between 2.2 and 2.3 people by the year 2021. However, in 2021, the actual household size was 2.5 people. In 1996, Australia had 6.9 million households with an average household size of 2.6. If based on the 1999 projections of Australia's household size of 2.2, Australia would require 11.8 million dwellings for the population and we currently have 10.8 million. Just because that was the projection does not mean that there would be the demand for that many properties. Social trends along the years can change a lot about the number of demanded properties required for the market. However, this does provide us some value, this figure. The information that can be derived from this number is valuable for providing some estimates around how many properties Australia could require. Whilst the media makes it out that Australia requires a significant increase in the number of dwellings to deal with the housing problem, Australia would only require an increase of 8.5% to reach the total 11.8 million dwellings target, combined with better utilisation of the current resources. Solving Australia's housing market woes might be more about solving the unknown than swinging hammers. In 2008, there was a report commissioned for Treasury that completed a significant amount of research into the longer term trends of the housing market using 2006 census data. Australia had 8.86 million dwellings at the time, and the report acknowledged that there were 830,000 dwellings vacant. The council assumed that most of these were probably second homes, homes in the process of sale, or homes awaiting redevelopment. There wasn't much explanation in the report that justified these reasons on a numerical basis, so let's test the hypothesized reasons above. The turnover ratio in Australia is around 6% on an annual basis. This represents the homes in the process of sale part. So 6% of Australia's housing stock in 2006 would be around 530,000 properties. Working on the assumption that it takes 3 months for a property to sell and that it's vacant for the entire time, this means that during the census, the maximum number of properties that are vacant would be around 132,000. This assumption clearly has some faults because not every property that changes hands is vacant. These assumptions are clearly a best case scenario. Let's explore the secondary dwellings part. At the time of the report, there was very limited knowledge around the size of Australia's secondary dwelling ownership. It wasn't until about 2009, a year after the report was completed, that there was an academic article published that estimated Australia has roughly 3% of its total dwellings as secondary dwellings. So based on 2006 census data, that means Australia would have around 265,000 homes. Homes are waiting to be demolished is the other explanation that is given. However, we do not have data for 2006 for this, but we do have information from 2016 to 2022 about the number of houses that were removed from the statistics. This range was around 3,000 to 6,000, so it's safe to assume that in 2006 the numbers would be somewhere in this range as well. Based on what was hypothesized in the report, we reach a total of 405,000 vacant properties that have an explainable reason given by the report for their vacancy on census night, around half of what was actually vacant. Developing on the work that was completed by this report, there are some other assumptions that can help us further explain the difference. There will be people whose properties are vacant because they are travelling on census night. It'd be very difficult to get the exact data for this. However, if we assumed 1% of the homes are vacant on census night for people travelling, both internationally and domestically, that is still only around 88,000 properties vacant on census night. So here's a breakdown of what we've discussed so far for the 2006 data. The total dwellings were 8.86 million. The vacant dwellings was 830,000. The homes in the process of sale, around 132,000. Secondary dwellings, 265,000. Homes awaiting to be demolished, 6,000. Homes vacant to travel, another 88,000. So that gives us a total of 491,000 homes that we can somewhat derive and explain their vacancy for. That still leaves us with 339,000 vacant homes in 2006, but we cannot explain why they are vacant. In contrast, the 2021 numbers are as follows: 10.8 million dwellings, total vacancies of dwellings, 1 million, homes in the process of sale, 162,000, secondary dwellings, 400,000, homes awaiting to be demolished, 6,000, homes vacant to travel, 108,000, total explained vacant homes on census night in 2021 would be 676,000, and it leaves us with a total unexplained vacant homes of 324,000. Either way, the disparity between how many are vacant and how many we can explain is still too high. We need to further develop on this explanation about why there are so many vacant properties. The development of platforms for short-term rentals means Australia has a higher second home ratio compared to 2006. Previously, it was estimated that Australia had around 3% of dwellings as second homes. We know that this is likely higher in 2021, as on Airbnb alone, there are over 380,000 holiday homes. 3% of Australia's dwelling stock is 324,000 in 2021. This 380,000 homes, whilst high, also represents properties that are already occupied because of the shared stays feature, whereby the owner rents out part of the property whilst still occupying it. It's possible that there is a notable amount of cross-listings between platforms, so the size of the secondary dwelling pool might seem less than initially thought. Despite these reasons, it's still important that the secondary dwelling number is increased as a percentage. For the assumptions of the 2021 data, we rounded it up from 324,000 to 400,000, a 23% increase in the ownership of second homes, and a 3.7% of the total dwelling stock. This is a very difficult number to calculate given the lack of information we have. However, it's also unlikely that the ownership of second homes has doubled in just over a decade. Therefore, a reasonable increase seems to be an acceptable number. Whilst Australia's property utilisation rate has increased, there is still room for improvement. In 2008, both the volume and the proportion of unaccounted for vacant homes was higher than what it was in 2021. However, having approximately 32% of properties that are vacant without a reason is still too high. Housing is a scarce resource that should be used to its maximum. To help understand where these vacancies are, we should think where they could exist easily. If the narrative of the rental shortage is true, they certainly are not sitting advertised on the rental market. One of the only places that hasn't been covered previously, with the potential of hundreds of thousands of vacant properties on census night, could be in new developments. One prominent development in Sydney South is still advertising new units years on from completion. Whilst we don't have any data on this, it wouldn't be hard to imagine that this could be a place where we see hundreds of thousands of vacant properties lying. These properties must exist somewhere, and based on everything that has been discussed previously, this seems like the most logical conclusion. So how does this relate back to the rental market, and what can be done to help improve the situation? Currently there's discussion that Australia needs to build more properties. Whilst that may be true, this is a long-term solution to the problem. What is required is an ability to increase supply today. Fixing the rental market is more about understanding why there are so many vacant properties. If developers are sitting on vacant new properties, slowly releasing supply to the market, that needs to stop. We don't have the luxury to waste resources. Solving Australia's rental crisis could be much easier than expected if the overarching theme of this video is true, that Australia has hundreds of thousands of vacant properties in new developments that are waiting to be sold. Then the solution is simple. The government can increase supply by introducing a vacancy tax. This will force developers to do either two things. Number one, sell the properties, leading to lower prices, which makes it easier for first home buyers. Number two, rent the vacant properties that they can't or don't want to sell. Either way, the supply of available housing is increased. Imagine the impact if only 100,000 properties across the country are put into the rental market. If Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne overnight had another 75,000 new rental properties on the market and the rest of the country another 25,000, not only would there be boosted supply, it's likely that the rents would stabilise. Once again, a win not only for Australia's 2.9 million renters, but also for the government that is having to find more social housing as more people are priced out of the rental market. This isn't a long-term solution, but it is one that can help increase supply into a market that is already fractured in a matter of months versus years. The answer to Australia's rental market issues is likely in understanding why the 324,000 vacant properties exist without a reason. If this number is better understood, public policy can be developed to help ensure there is increased utilisation of housing stock.